On screen, Jesse James looked fearless. He built West Coast choppers from a small garage in 1992. In 2002, he became the face of Monster Garage. Millions watched him command a shop, push his team, and turn raw steel into custom machines. He looked like a man in total control. But behind that image was a boy raised in a broken home, constantly feeling like he wasn't enough. He worked 16-hour days to avoid the emptiness he carried. He chased recognition, he chased love, and he destroyed the very things he built. In 2010, an affair scandal shattered his marriage to Sandra Bullock. He apologized publicly. He admitted to sex addiction. He entered rehab alone today, in his late 50s. He still has money, but he cannot undo what he lost. When you look at the full story, this is not just a scandal. It is the story of a man who sabotaged the love he needed most. And that is the real heartbreak. Childhood and adolescence. The foundation of instability. Jesse James was born on April 19, 1969, and raised in Riverside. His parents divorced when he was still a child. The separation forced him to divide his time between two homes. The structure of a traditional family disappeared early. He adapted by becoming self-reliant. He stopped expecting consistency. He spent long hours with his father inside a warehouse filled with motorcycle frames, spare engines, and scattered tools. The air carried the smell of oil and burned metal. The concrete floors stayed dirty. At 7 years old, he assembled his first mini-bike. He held a welding torch before most children learned basic math formulas. He practiced bending tubing and shaping steel. When he stayed with his mother, he continued working alone in the garage. Metal responded to pressure. People did not. The mechanical world rewarded effort. If he worked hard, a machine improved. That logic made sense to him. Emotional relationships felt unpredictable. He rarely spoke about fear or sadness. He channeled frustration into work. The garage became a refuge. It also became a place of isolation. Instead of building emotional stability, he built skill. The imbalance would matter later. In his teenage years, football gave him a different structure. At La Sierra High School, he played aggressively. Coaches described him as intense and physical. He embraced contact. He trained hard and believed sports could provide direction beyond Riverside. After graduation, he enrolled at Riverside City College to continue playing. Then, injuries ended the plan. A serious knee injury forced him off the field. Another major injury followed. Doctors recommended he stop competing. The decision removed his identity overnight. Football had given him discipline, teammates, and recognition. Without it, he felt unanchored. He returned to motorcycles not as a hobby, but as a necessity. The shop was the only place where he still felt competent. The end of his athletic path hardened him. He learned to tolerate pain. He learned to ignore limits. He also developed a habit of pushing forward without reflection. That mindset later shaped his business style and personal decisions. He equated endurance with strength. He avoided vulnerability. There is no verified evidence connecting him to the 19th century outlaw, Jesse James. Despite that, he embraced the shared name. The outlaw image offered symbolism. It projected rebellion and independence. It gave him a persona that felt powerful. The myth helped him in branding. It also encouraged a rigid, defiant attitude. By early adulthood, the pattern was established. He possessed advanced mechanical skill and relentless drive. He lacked emotional grounding. He trusted machines more than people. He responded to loss with work, not conversation. The same traits that prepared him to build a company would later complicate every major relationship in his life. Early career, from setbacks to success, but under crushing pressure. Before he ever became a television personality or a symbol of outlaw motorcycle culture, Jesse James was just a physically imposing guy working security for heavy rock bands in the early 1990s. Nights were spent backstage and in mosh pits with groups like Slayer, Glenn Danzig, and Soundgarden. It was loud, volatile work, unpredictable crowds, sudden violence, constant adrenaline. For a while, it suited him, but the lifestyle took its toll. A serious shoulder injury ended that chapter abruptly, stripping away his income and forcing him to confront an uncertain future. With few options and even fewer savings, Jesse turned back to the one thing that had always grounded him: motorcycles. In 1992, he founded West Coast Choppers in his mother's garage. It wasn't a calculated entrepreneurial leap. It was closer to survival. He had almost no capital, no investors, and no safety net. He slept on the cold concrete floor, worked endless hours welding frames and shaping steel, and poured everything he had into building machines that reflected his uncompromising vision. The early years were brutal. Nearly every custom bike cost more to build than it brought in. Materials were expensive, time was scarce, and customers were few. Each finished motorcycle felt like both an artistic triumph and a financial setback. Bills accumulated quietly in the background, the pressure to keep going, to prove that this gamble was not a mistake, weighed heavily on him. Still, the setbacks hardened him. He learned to fabricate parts from scratch, to negotiate deals, to build not just bikes, but a brand. By 1994, the operation moved into a slightly larger rented space. 2 years later, a small team joined him, sharing both the dream and the uncertainty. The breakthrough came in 1997, when a documentary feature on Discovery Channel introduced his raw, stripped-down style to a wider audience. Suddenly, what had been a garage experiment began attracting national attention. West Coast Choppers became known for its elongated frames, exposed metal, and bold Iron Cross logo, a look that felt unapologetically aggressive. By 2001, the company had grown to around 50 employees. High-profile clients like Shaquille O'Neal and Kid Rock commissioned custom bikes, cementing the brand's reputation. From the outside, it appeared to be a meteoric rise. Yet, beneath the surface, the business remained fragile. The motorcycles themselves rarely generated significant profit. Merchandise, t-shirts, hats, branded gear often kept the company afloat. The brand was expanding faster than its financial stability. Growth brought visibility, but also mounting expectations and deeper stress. As recognition intensified, so did the workload. Jesse pushed himself relentlessly, often working 16-hour days and overseeing every detail. When invited to display his creations at the Solomon R. Guggenheim Museum, he declined, fearing that institutional validation might dilute the street-born authenticity that defined his work. It was a decision rooted in principle, but also in pride. Over time, the constant strain, financial risk, rapid expansion, personal stubbornness began to show. The intensity that fueled his rise also carried the seeds of instability. What looked like unstoppable success was, in reality, a man holding together a fast-growing empire with sheer willpower. The fire that built West Coast Choppers burned bright, but it was never calm. Peak fame and the beginning of the fall. From celebrity to scandal by the early 2000s, Jesse James was no longer just a custom bike builder. He was a television phenomenon. What had started in a garage had evolved into primetime spectacle. The breakthrough came with Motorcycle Mania in 2000, a documentary-style special that introduced mainstream audiences to his raw world of fabrication and attitude. But it was Monster Garage in 2002 that turned him into a household name. The premise was simple and outrageous. Take an ordinary vehicle and transform it into something absurdly mechanical within days. A PT Cruiser became a wood chipper. A Ford Mustang was rebuilt into a functioning lawnmower. A Cadillac hearse exploded spectacularly during one infamous build. At its peak, the show drew nearly 2 million viewers per episode. There was even a memorable special filmed at a school for the deaf, a rare moment where spectacle met sincerity. The chaos was the hook. Jesse barked orders, fired contestants on camera, and lashed out when builds went wrong. His volatility made for compelling television. Viewers were drawn to the intensity, the sense that anything could happen. But behind the entertainment value, something more troubling was visible. The anger was not entirely performative. The need for control, the explosive temper, the humiliation of participants. It hinted at instability that fame only amplified. Television didn't create his volatility, it magnified it. While the shows thrived, cracks in the business foundation widened. West Coast Chopper's real financial engine wasn't custom motorcycles, it was merchandise. A distribution deal with Walmart reportedly generated around $100 million in just 60 days at its height. The brand's logo was everywhere. Yet internally, the economics were fragile. In 2010, a legal battle with Fortune Fashions exposed disputes over licensing and payments. Though Jesse ultimately prevailed in court, the lawsuit pulled back the curtain on internal conflicts and dependency on retail partnerships. The illusion of an unstoppable empire began to fade. The Long Beach headquarters closed in 2010. Employees reportedly learned about the shutdown through media reports rather than internal meetings. For many who had helped build the company from the ground up, it felt like betrayal. The same intensity that built the brand now seemed to be dismantling it. Then came the scandals that would permanently alter his public image. Between 2006 and 2007, allegations of sexual harassment surfaced, leading to settlements reportedly totaling $725,000. The stories painted a picture of inappropriate behavior and blurred professional boundaries. In 2010, photographs taken years earlier in 2004 resurfaced, showing Jesse posing with Nazi imagery. He claimed the gesture was intended as a joke, but the timing was catastrophic, particularly as news broke of multiple extramarital affairs, including one involving a woman who also had Nazi-themed photos. The overlap magnified the backlash. These controversies marked a turning point. Sponsors distanced themselves. Public perception shifted from rebellious craftsman to scandal-plagued celebrity. For critics, the incidents revealed character flaws long masked by charisma and success. For observers looking deeper, they suggested unresolved trauma and compulsive behavior, patterns possibly rooted in earlier emotional wounds that had never been addressed. The rise of Jesse James had been fueled by aggression, defiance, and relentless drive. But those same traits, unchecked and intensified by fame, contributed to his unraveling. The empire that once seemed indestructible proved fragile. What had been marketed as outlaw authenticity began to look like self-destruction playing out in real time. Personal tragedy, broken marriages, and family wars. If Jesse James's professional life was volatile, his personal life was even more turbulent. Behind the custom bikes, television fame, and public bravado was a pattern of relationships that seemed to collapse under the weight of unresolved emotional turmoil. His first marriage was to Carla James in 1991. The couple had 2 children together and remained married for over a decade before divorcing in 2002. Compared to the chaos that would follow, this chapter was relatively quiet. Carla largely stayed out of the spotlight after their split, choosing privacy over public conflict. But even in its silence, the dissolution hinted at strain. Jesse's relentless work schedule, mounting stress, and growing public profile likely created emotional distance. The marriage ended not in spectacle, but in the kind of slow erosion that often leaves deeper scars than a dramatic explosion. Later in 2002, he married Janine Lindemulder. They had a daughter, Sunny, but the relationship quickly deteriorated, ending in divorce in 2004. What followed was a bitter custody battle that exposed painful accusations on both sides. Janine faced legal troubles and was incarcerated in 2009 for tax-related charges, complicating the custody dispute. In 2010, Jesse was granted primary custody after a widely reported incident in which Sunny briefly went missing while in Janine's care. The conflict dragged through courts and tabloids, turning private anguish into public spectacle. The prolonged legal war revealed not just parental tension, but deeper emotional instability, a pattern of conflict that would repeat. Then came the relationship that would elevate him to Hollywood royalty and ultimately deliver his most devastating fall. Jesse met Sandra Bullock in 2003. They married in 2005, blending their lives in a way that seemed to humanize and stabilize him. Sandra embraced his children and publicly supported his career. To many observers, she appeared to be the grounding force he needed. But in 2010, the illusion shattered. Multiple women came forward alleging affairs, including Michelle McGee and Melissa Smith. Reports claimed there were as many as 19 extramarital partners. The timing could not have been worse. The scandal broke just as Sandra was celebrating major professional success. Public sympathy overwhelmingly favored her. While Jesse became a symbol of betrayal, he publicly admitted to poor judgment and entered rehabilitation at Sierra Tucson, citing sex addiction. The admission was an attempt at accountability, but the damage was irreparable. Their divorce was finalized in 2010. The fallout was catastrophic. He lost not only his marriage, but also much of his public credibility. The humiliation was global for a man who had built his image on control and defiance. The exposure was devastating. It marked the collapse of his most high-profile relationship and arguably the permanent fracture of his public persona. The years that followed showed a troubling cycle. He became engaged to Kat Von D in 2010, but the relationship ended in 2011 amid further allegations of infidelity, claims that he had cheated numerous times. In 2013, he married Alexis DeJoria. That marriage lasted until 2022, ending quietly compared to earlier breakups, but still adding to the pattern. Later in 2022, he married Bonnie Rotten. Their relationship has reportedly involved multiple divorce filings and reconciliations, with public accusations of abuse surfacing along the way. Across decades, the pattern appears cyclical: intense romance, instability, rupture, attempted reinvention. Each new beginning seemed to carry hope of transformation. Yet the underlying issues resurfaced. Temporary reconciliation never erased the deeper wounds. Jesse James's personal life reflects a man repeatedly chasing connection while struggling to sustain it. Fame amplified his flaws, but the roots likely ran deeper: unresolved trauma, compulsive behavior, and a persistent search for validation. Success could not shield him from emotional collapse. In the end, the most enduring battles were not fought in courtrooms or tabloids, but within the fragile architecture of his own relationships. Comeback attempts and repeated setbacks, from television to new ventures. After the scandals that derailed both his reputation and his marriage, Jesse James attempted what many public figures attempt after disgrace: reinvention. But the road back proved uneven. In 2012, he returned to television with Outlaw Garage, a show built around his move to Texas and his effort to re-establish himself in the custom car world. The series, however, failed to capture the raw unpredictability that once made him compelling. Around the same time, Austin's Speed Shop was launched but reportedly canceled after just 3 episodes due to weak engagement. Jesse publicly criticized Discovery Channel, claiming the network failed to properly support or promote the projects. The tension underscored a shift in power. He was no longer the ratings magnet he had once been. In 2021, Monster Garage was revived, banking on nostalgia, while longtime fans welcomed its return. The reboot failed to reach the cultural peak of its early 2000s run. The edge that once felt dangerous now felt familiar. Television had changed, audiences had changed, and perhaps Jesse himself had changed. The revival confirmed something difficult. Lightning rarely strikes twice in the same place. Turning away from television, he focused on rebuilding through business. West Coast Choppers was relaunched in Austin, Texas, this time targeting high-end custom motorcycles rather than mass-market branding. In 2013, he founded Jesse James Firearms Unlimited, producing custom firearms, including limited edition weapons reportedly crafted from steel, reclaimed from the Statue of Liberty. The move reinforced his appeal among a niche, loyal customer base, but also intensified criticism from detractors who viewed it as provocative. Financially, he remained successful. Estimates have placed his net worth around $50 million at various points, suggesting that, despite controversy, he maintained strong revenue streams, yet legal disputes continued to follow him. In 2024, a customer reportedly filed a lawsuit seeking $75,000 over alleged delays in a custom build, reigniting scrutiny over delivery practices and business transparency. Even when he won legal battles, the publicity revived old narratives about instability and conflict. In recent years, Jesse expanded into digital media with OUTLW.TV and launched Jesse James Bourbon, signaling an effort to control his own platforms and branding without network interference. These ventures suggest resilience and entrepreneurial instinct. Still, the shadow of past scandals lingers. Each new project is evaluated not only on its quality, but through the lens of his history. Jesse James's comeback story is not a clean arc of redemption. It is fragmented, marked by flashes of innovation, moments of financial strength, and recurring controversy. He has proven capable of rebuilding, yet the past remains inseparable from the present, a reminder that reinvention is never complete when reputation has been permanently altered. Conclusion. Lessons from the tragedy of Jesse James. The life of Jesse James reads like a modern American parable, a story that begins in childhood chaos, rises to explosive fame, and then fractures under the weight of its own contradictions. From a turbulent upbringing marked by instability and emotional wounds, he built an empire of steel, speed, and spectacle. Through Monster Garage and the brand of West Coast Choppers, he transformed mechanical skill into cultural dominance. At his peak, he was not just a builder of machines, but a symbol of rebellious American craftsmanship. Yet the same intensity that fueled his ascent also seeded his collapse. His empire proved more fragile than it appeared, dependent on merchandise deals, television ratings, and a carefully constructed persona. When scandals erupted, the structure cracked. Allegations of misconduct, public humiliation, and deeply personal betrayals dismantled the myth almost overnight. What remained was not just financial strain, but emotional exposure. At the core of his unraveling were forces that predated fame: unresolved childhood trauma, admitted struggles with sex addiction, and a relentless drive for validation. Success amplified these vulnerabilities rather than curing them. The pressure to maintain dominance, creatively, financially, romantically, fed a cycle of impulsive decisions and self-sabotage. Each new beginning carried the seeds of another collapse. Reinvention became a pattern, but so did destruction. The lesson in Jesse James's story is stark. Public acclaim cannot substitute for internal stability. Wealth can cushion consequences, but cannot erase emotional fractures. Reinvention is possible, and he has proven repeatedly that he can rebuild businesses and regain financial footing. But reinvention does not undo damage. It does not restore trust overnight. It does not silence memory. As of 2026, Jesse James remains wealthy, entrepreneurial, and active. Yet he also remains surrounded by turbulence, legal disputes, controversial ventures, and personal instability that suggest the storm never fully passed. His life stands as both caution and study. Talent without healing can become self-destructive. Fame without grounding can magnify hidden wounds. In the end, Jesse James is neither purely villain nor victim. He is a complex figure shaped by trauma, empowered by talent, and haunted by his own patterns. His story does not conclude with redemption or total ruin. Instead, it remains open. A man still building, still battling, still caught somewhere between mastery and mayhem.